Hi everyone, Heather here with astrologywithheather.com, and I am back with another weekly forecast. This one is for Monday, November 12th, all the way through to Sunday, November 18th of 2018. And so this week we have a couple big transitions going on in the astrology yet again. We have Venus, which is finally stationing to go direct. It's going to be really strong in the skies, stationing to go direct in the sign of Libra, and that is happening on, let's see here, on Friday, on the 16th. And that's going to be happening on the exact same day that Mercury will be stationing to go retrograde. Yep, we're already there again. Mercury's retrograding. It'll be going through Sagittarius and then backwards into the sign of Scorpio this time. So for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be having, the same sort of standard Mercury retrograde considerations that we need to make, right? When it comes to signing contracts, making agreements, sending messages, emails, working with electronics, working with communication over the phone, working, with all of those sort of mercurial types of energies where things can kind of get a little dicey. And this is especially going to affect people, I would say, in the United States for, travel plans for the holidays, for Thanksgiving, right? We're having Thanksgiving coming up in just a week after Mercury goes retrograde. And so travel plans might be a little bit less organized than they normally are. There might be more confusion, more little hiccups, miscommunications, delays, that type of thing. So just make sure that you get, your car checked out before you get on the road to go to grandma's house or wherever you're going for Thanksgiving dinner. And just make sure you have all your ducks in a row, right? Double and triple check everything because, Mercury will be in retrograde. And, the general energy of this Mercury retrograde is going to be kind of an interesting one. I spoke about this with Robert Phoenix in my video earlier this week that we did together about the new moon and the lunar cycle ahead, with the Mercury retrograde going from the sign of Sagittarius backward into Scorpio and what that sort of signifies. And one of the things that he brought up that I thought was actually quite, brilliant and spot on was that Mercury being in retrograde, right, in Sagittarius, we're going to think that we kind of know the truth already because Sagittarius rules the truth. It's the higher truth. It's like the truth in terms of like our moral and ethical truth, right? But then when Mercury moves backward into Scorpio, that's a really good time to do a lot of digging and to do a little bit more research in whatever area this brings about that energy for us. And so that's where we can really get to the bottom of things. And so we might find out that what we thought was the truth, it wasn't actually the truth when we really did some digging. And so, that's going to be kind of interesting. And then also having Mercury in Sagittarius, around the holidays, which we talked about. You can go back and watch that video. But Mercury in Sagittarius is an energy where people are kind of putting their foot in their mouth in terms of just blurting out things, not necessarily maliciously, right? That's not Sagittarius. Sagittarius is very sort of happy-go-lucky. They're not necessarily saying things to be mean to people. They're just saying the truth, right? And they say it regardless. And sometimes people might not take it well with Mercury and Sagittarius. And so with Mercury retrograde, it's about taking time to think about what we say and how that how the language we use might affect the people around us, right? Before we speak and before we, say that thing that might not be taken quite the right way. And so that's another consideration, again, especially for people here in the United States going through Thanksgiving and all of that, just thinking about, choosing your words wisely, thinking about the language that you're using, thinking, do I really need to say this before I actually go ahead and say it? That type of stuff, right? The other energy that's going to be a big shift this week is that Mars is going into Pisces. Mars tends to not do super well in Pisces. And again, we talked about this pretty in depth on a general level in the video that we just did a couple days ago with Robert and I. So you can go back and listen to that if you'd like. But Mars being in the sign of Pisces, first off, it's finally out of Aquarius. It's been in Aquarius and / Capricorn forever now because of the Mars retrograde cycle. So it's a big shift in energy. Whereas normally the Mars transitions aren't, they're a big shift. It changes what motivates us, what lights us up, what gets us sort of fired up to take action. That is what is shifting. And what gets us fired up with Mars and Pisces is idealism, is interconnectedness, is spirituality and mysticism, creativity, compassion, love. This is a really great time to do something charitable, right? To give back to other people, to take action in a way that's very creative, loving, intuitive, connected, you know, to act on your ideals. That's Mars in the sign of Pisces. But what Mars can also bring in the sign of Pisces is, you know, just daydreaming about what it is that you want to do instead of actually doing it. It can dissolve your willpower, make people apathetic, lazy. It can make a lot of confusion around what direction to move into, right? Because that's the nature of Mars. It's like picking a focus and going in and taking action. Mars in Pisces is sort of floating around, like, what do I do? How do I do it? Where do I go next? And so that could be an energy that's brought up for a lot of people as well. But yeah, that's kind of the general energy for this week. We have a couple big shifts happening on Friday. Friday is going to be a big day. Thursday as well, obviously Mars moving into Pisces, but Friday is really the big day this week because that's when we're having Venus stationing. We're having 2 planets stationed, so it's like time has stopped, right? We have Venus not moving. So, you know, and when in terms of like Venus stationing, it's like a snapshot. Whatever's going on in relationships at that moment is going to be amplified in importance. With Mercury stationing, it's a similar energy, but with communication, with your thoughts, your intelligence, whatever it is that you're learning, whatever it is that you're thinking about on that day, it's amplified in importance. And when Mercury, when it stations, at least in my book and in my experience, when Mercury stations, that's actually the most potent sort of retrograde energy where things get a little dicey and it can be very difficult to sort of work through the smog. Your brain might be moving a little bit more slowly. Communication might just not be coming in when you expect it to come in. But this Mercury retrograde will actually be quite nice. It's going to hit, well, it will square Mars. That's one of the things that will happen because Mars is moving into Pisces. But Mercury will also conjunct Jupiter on and off throughout this entire retrograde period. And so, you know, that's going to be a more beneficial, sort of harmonious, beautiful energy in communication, where we can see the bigger picture and the broader perspective and communicate that with others. And so yeah, so that's what's going on in terms of the general energy. And so now I'm going to get into the forecast for all 12 signs, beginning, of course, with the sign of Aries. And so for Aries and for Aries rising, you're having, first off, Venus is stationing to go direct in the sign of Libra. And so this is going to be highlighting relationships for you in general. Anything that goes on in relationships is going to be amplified on this day. And so this could bring up a lot of sort of interesting energy. It's going to cause you to take a stop and take a look at what's going on in the area of your life involving relationships, contracts, agreements, all of that type of stuff. The bigger energy that's happening and the bigger shift is going to be, obviously, Mercury is going to be stationing to go retrograde. It's going to be retrograding in your 9th house of beliefs, of higher education, of foreign travel, of connection with people in foreign countries. And so this is going to be a time, especially because Mercury, when it goes retrograde, it's more internalized, right? We're not communicating everything we're thinking quite so much. And when we do communicate everything we're thinking, that's when things get a little dicey, right? That's where, especially in the sign of Sagittarius, we might hurt people when we don't intend to. We might say something that doesn't come across in the right way. But when we have, you know, the retrograde energy, it's time for us to sort of think and review and internalize when it comes to, for Aries people, your beliefs, the bigger picture, the broader perspective, your integrity, your morality, your ethical values, your philosophies on life, the beliefs that frame the universe, that frame your reality through your beliefs about God, the universe, the world around you. This could be a time when you're rethinking something involving your education or some sort of higher educational pursuit. This would be an interesting time for travel plans for Aries over the course of, of this retrograde period, right? So you might be thinking that you know the truth, that you know the bigger picture, and you have a good perspective on something. But at the start of December, when Mercury retrogrades back into the 8th house, you're probably going to realize that it goes a little bit deeper and that you didn't dig far enough, and that there's a deeper truth that's sort of hidden beneath the surface. And so this is, you know, obviously related to all of those themes that we just talked about: travel, connections with people in foreign countries, but especially your beliefs, because this is internalized. So this is a lot of like philosophizing. This is a lot of, you know, thinking and rethinking your framework of reality. And, you know, this is you kind of honing in. And if you do have travel plans, you might have to go back and change things once, twice, 3 times. And this could also be sort of a reconfiguration of your beliefs about power, money, control, sex, topics that are deep, sort of like looking into topics like the occult, right? Occult sciences, magic, things that are sort of demonized, cast out, and taboo, because that's also Mercury going into the 8th house. And that's a time when Aries people in particular will probably be doing a lot of research. They'll be really focusing in on something that they need to reevaluate on that deeper level. And that's a good time for like psychotherapy, for any sort of deep introspective work where you're getting in there and you're sort of facing your fears, traumas, anxieties, insecurities, the stuff that's like hidden away beneath the surface. For Taurus and for Taurus rising, this energy is happening in your 8th house, or sorry, first, so Venus is stationing in your 6th house, and this is going to bring to light some sort of energy involving relationships with coworkers, relationships with your work, relationships with your body, and maybe a need to come back into balance or into better harmony. Bring your body back into homeostasis through your health routines, your nutrition, that type of thing. So it's about coming back into balance when it as it relates to your health, as it relates to your day-to-day work experience, as it relates to your surroundings in your work environment, which maybe are disharmonious and maybe a little bit disheveled. Maybe you're looking at the aesthetics of your office and you're like, wow, all right, this is where I am right now. Maybe moving forward, I should change things and make it a little bit more comfortable so I feel more at ease. Maybe there's a relationship with an important person at your work that comes up for you at this time, and you're like, okay, I need to look at this. Venus is stationing, so something's going on here. This is important. And so it's a little windy and blustery today. That's the energy of, my dogs are barking at all the kids coming home from school. But that's the energy of Venus in the stationing in the 6th house. And then you have Mercury. Mercury is going to be retrograding from your 8th house back into your 7th house. And so Mercury retrograding in the 8th house is a time for deep introspection. It's a time for, first off, you could redo something or rebalance your budget or sort of reflect on something involving money, joint finances, right? Debt, inheritance, other people's money. It's money that comes in through an outside source. It could even be something involving an investment. So maybe there's a need to rethink or reevaluate the way that you're utilizing your money, especially as it relates to joint finances. This could also be a really great time for everyone who is a Taurus rising, especially, to do a little bit of research, to do a little bit of digging, because you're going to be hyper focused on whatever it is on a mental, sort of intellectual level that you're interested in or passionate about during this time frame. Your words might become a little bit more intense, a little bit darker. You might be not necessarily wanting surface level interactions. You might want that deep sort of philosophical connection. And so you might find yourself pulling away and communicating a lot less during this Mercury retrograde period. And then, as you go through this period of introspection and reflection where you're sort of doing the deep inner work and you're digging deeper, you're looking at your deep-seated fears, wounds, insecurities, dredging those up and analyzing it, Mercury is going to retrograde back into Scorpio, which is your 7th house, and that might be a time where you might need to bring something up. You might need to rehash a conversation or an old argument or a dispute with, a family member or a partner or a spouse or some sort of close friendship where, you need to revisit something. You need to kind of go back and look into that energy again. All right. And so for Gemini and for Gemini rising, Venus is stationing to go direct in your 5th house of romance. And so this could be this is kind of a snapshot of your romantic life, right? And your romantic partnerships, your relationships, your creativity. It has a lot to do with your hobbies, your interests, the things that you love to do. And so whatever's going on for you in that area on Friday, pay attention to that, because it's trying to show you something. It's showing you where you need to come back into balance in one way or another. And it's looking at your relationship with children. It's looking at your relationship with your romantic partners, love affairs, flings, that type of thing. But it's also looking at your relationship with your inner child and how to come back into balance through connecting with yourself and connecting with your passions, the things that you truly love because you love to do it, right? And that could be you reconnecting with some sort of creative passion from the past that, maybe you let it sort of fall by the wayside, and now you're feeling a really intense, really strong pull to bring that creativity back into your life so you can have more joy, so you can have more play. With the Mercury retrograde, hi Jake. Jake is joining us today. He's co-starring in this video. Good boy. So for the Mercury retrograde for Gemini rising, Mercury is going to be retrograding from Sagittarius back into Scorpio. And so at the beginning of this could bring up a lot of past communication from people in past relationships, which you probably have already maybe experienced a little bit of that because you had Venus retrograding into your 5th house, especially these past couple of weeks, bringing up old like romances, old wounds in romance and in love affairs and those types of things, sort of rehashing some of that. But with Mercury retrograding over your descendant and, you know, in your 7th house, this is going to bring up a lot of energy around sort of revisiting old relationships, revisiting and renegotiating old contracts in your current relationships. You know, this is a time to look at the agreements that you've made and to sort of discuss them, to hash it out, to rethink the structure of your relationship, to rethink the communication style in your relationship, to bring up, you know, any important sort of unresolved communications from the past, especially as it relates to a romantic partnership or something along those lines. Bring it up so that way it can be sort of finalized and finished and you can work through it and then move on. When Mercury goes backward into the 6th house, that's going to be a busy time, I would say, for Geminis, which will be at the start of December. And that's going to be a time when the focus is going to be on sort of having to redo something when it comes to your work, especially your day-to-day work routines. This could bring up old conversations or old issues with coworkers that haven't been resolved, that need to come up, that you need to sort of work through and move through in order to move forward truly and fully. This is going to be the last time that Mercury is retrograding in Sagittarius for quite some time. We've had Mercury retrograding in the fire signs for the past couple of years, and in 2019 it's actually the retrograde cycles will be in the water signs instead. And so this is the last time to sort of hone in on these areas of life, right? And so this is going to be the first taste of Mercury retrograde in these cycles in Scorpio, which will come back around next year. So this is going to be you having to sort of revisit something when it comes to your career, your work, the way that you show up on a day-to-day basis. And usually when Mercury retrogrades through the 6th house, that's going to be more mishaps involving sort of miscommunications with coworkers, emails, you know, those types of things as well. Even things like your computer at the office, if you work, you know, away from home. You know, there's going to be a little bit of confusion in that area. So just make sure you double and triple check your work during the Mercury retrograde period, especially at that start of December. For Cancer and for Cancer rising, Venus is stationing to go direct in your 4th house of the home and family. And so this is going to be a snapshot of some sort of important issue involving relationships within your family unit and a need to sort of come back into balance, to revisit something in that area of life so that way you can create better harmony in your relationships with your family members, or your relationship, or just your balance and harmony and tranquility in your home environment moving forward. And then Mercury is going to be going retrograde. It's going to station to go retrograde in your 6th house of work. This might be a very busy time, or a time of a lot of confusion involving communication or your relationships with your coworkers. This could also be you sort of revisiting your health routines and looking at where you need to change something, right? So that way you can be healthier, so you can survive and thrive on, you know, a whole other level when it comes to your health and your nutrition, your vitality and all of that. You know, this is probably going to be a busy week, or a busy 3 weeks, really, 2 to 3 weeks for Cancers when it comes to your work. So you probably have a lot to do and a lot to wrap up before the holidays. And so that's going to come to the forefront. Just make sure that you're not rushing through everything, because, you know, mistakes can be made quite easily with Mercury retrograding in your 6th house. Mercury is going to be retrograding backward into your 5th house, and this could bring up any sort of old, this could cause you to be sort of rethinking things as it relates to love affairs, boyfriend-girlfriend relationships, as it relates to your hobbies, your interests, the things that you love to do. You might think about taking back up, you know, something that you used to love to do, you know, like maybe you used to, I don't know, with Scorpio, you used to do something that you were really deeply, truly passionate about, and it made you feel like you were doing something meaningful. And so Mercury going retrograde into your 5th house at the start of December might cause you to want to revisit some of that energy. This could also cause you to have to revisit something involving children. If you have children, there could be like miscommunications and mishaps involving children. So it could be like maybe you didn't get that notice from the school that the day was that they're getting let out early, or something changed, and then you sort of missed the mark and let something fall through the cracks. So just make sure that you're double and triple checking everything on that end as well. For Leo and for Leo rising, Venus is stationing to go direct in your 3rd house. And so this is going to be a snapshot of how you communicate in relationship, right? So there could be some very interesting communications coming in for you, you know, especially toward the end of this week. And so looking at the way that you communicate, the way that you talk to yourself, the way that you talk to other people, and maybe taking into account the needs of others before you say things, especially, I mean, that's something that you would already be doing because you have that Libra on the 3rd house cusp, but this is going to show you maybe where you're taking too much consideration for the needs of others and not making decisions and not speaking your mind, right? That's part of it as well. Venus is, as the morning star, is a little bit more rebellious, right? And so, you know, taking a snapshot and a look at your communication, your relationships with other people and the way that you communicate with them, and the way that maybe you do sort of let yourself get walked all over, or you're taking too much care to account for other people's needs. Let's see. And then so Mercury is going to be retrograding from your 5th house backward into your 4th house. And so Mercury retrograding in the 5th house is going to bring up sort of revisiting a lot of energy around your hobbies, your interests, the things that you love to do, your passions. You might decide that you need to sort of change something or reorganize your life in a certain way so that way you can have more time to do the things that you love to do, to engage in your passions, your hobbies, your interests. If you have your sun, moon, rising near 13 degrees in Leo, Mercury is going to be retrograding and trine with your ascendant. And so reconnecting with your passions, reconnecting with your creative self-expression just for the sake of creative self-expression is going to you know, benefit you in a lot of different ways. It's going to help you to be seen by others in a way that's more positive. It's going to help you to feel like you're being more authentic and more true to yourself. This could also bring up issues around communication involving children, or, you know, like love affairs, romance, something like that. If you're in some sort of, you know, secret love affair, you know, don't leave your phone out because there's, you know, text messages, things like that, right? There could be some sort of mishap going on. And this could, just like I was saying for Cancers, you know, if you have children, you know, maybe there's like a communication from their school that you miss and some sort of, you know, mishap or difficulty there. You might have to sort of revisit the way that you parent your children for whatever reason, and maybe make some changes and some adjustments there. And so there's a lot of different potentials, and especially because Mercury is going to be retrograding backward into your 4th house, this is going to be sort of looking at issues involving family, right? So you're going to be thinking about your family, your home, your property, and maybe you need to make some adjustments and make some changes, and you know, rethink the plans that you've already made, so that way going forward you have a better foundation for yourself, right, in that area of your roots. This could bring up some interesting miscommunications involving family members as well. So just make sure that you're being very careful about the language that you use, especially in Scorpio. When Mercury is retrograding in Scorpio and you have Scorpio in the 4th house and you're, you know, spending time with family for the holidays and all of that, maybe think about things and internalize it a little bit extra before you speak, right? Because that's I mean, that's just good advice anyway, but especially when you have this energy going on in your 4th house, because there could be mishaps and miscommunications, or people not necessarily taking what you say in the way that you mean it. For Virgo and for Virgo rising, Venus is going to be stationing to go direct in your 2nd house of finances. So this is going to be bringing up something really important and really powerful when it comes to balancing your budget, when it comes to the way that you deal with your resources, the way that you enjoy your resources. And so, you know, there might be something that you need to change in this area in order to come back into balance, and that might be highlighted pretty intensely at the end of this week. You're also going to have Mercury retrograding backward from Sagittarius in your 4th house into Scorpio in your 3rd. And so the first part of this Mercury retrograde will be all about revisiting, revising, re-editing, reorganizing when it comes to your home, your family, your property. And so this is a really great time to clean out your closets, to redecorate, reorganize, make sure that you don't have like a lot of clutter and things like that. That's a really good way to utilize this energy. This could bring up mishaps, miscommunications, and things like that involving potentially a move, right? If you're planning on moving or doing something along those lines during this Mercury retrograde period, this could bring up a need to sort of renegotiate some sort of contract as it relates to, you know, your home, your property. Maybe, you know, you're refinancing your home. Maybe you need to re-sign your lease. Maybe you need to renegotiate the terms of your lease, those types of things. I would say that, you know, those are all good Mercury retrograde activities. But you do have to be aware that whatever it is that you're changing in this area might not last in the way that you think it will, or it's subject to change after Mercury goes direct, right? So the results might not be exactly what you intend, but they'll usually be whatever you need. And then Mercury's going to retrograde back into your third house, and Mercury retrograde in the third house is like the retrogradiest Mercury retrograde because the third house is the house of Mercury. And I have found in my own personal life, the last time we had Mercury retrograding in my third house, I really thought it was going to be, you know, pretty simple. I was like, oh, Mercury retrograde in my third house. That's third house stuff already. Communication, short distance travel, you know, vehicles, text messages, phone calls, emails, all of this. And that was like the hardest Mercury retrograde because it was like a lot of little annoying things going wrong the whole time. And so just make sure that you're double and triple checking everything, backing things up prior to December 1st, because that's when Mercury is going to retrograde back into Scorpio and into your third house. Because there is potential for, you know, a lot of little tiny mishaps that lead to a lot of big frustrations in that area. For Libra and for Libra rising, so Venus is going to be stationing to go direct in your first house, and so this is you sort of taking a look at your self-image, right, and the way that you sort of project your energy out into the world. This could be you sort of taking a good hard look in the mirror and saying, wow, I should get a makeover, right? I'm not happy with my appearance. Or taking a look at the way that you interrelate with other people and maybe not being happy about the way that you're coming across. This could very personally bring up some sort of old flame or old relationship for you as well. It just kind of depends on the situation and where you're at. But so whatever comes up for you on that day, especially because Libra is your ruling planet, pay very close attention because there's something there that the universe is sort of causing you to have to focus on during this time where you're getting that snapshot, right, of that sort of really strong and intense Venusian energy. So maybe you need to change your style. Maybe you need to have a makeover so that way you can reinvent yourself and feel better and more confident. Maybe you need to change the way that you approach relationship or the way that you connect with other people. My cat is now on the roof. I don't know why I let my pets out when I'm doing this video. So that's the Venus stationing to go direct in your first house. Mercury is going to be retrograding through your third house back into your second. And so the first part of this Mercury retrograde is going to be a lot of energy around miscommunication, mishaps, having to redo things when it comes to writing, when it comes to sending out communications, emails, text messages, that type of thing. Having to reorganize maybe your office space, having to reorganize the way your thoughts, right? Having to rethink a lot of different things about essentially the way that you sort of your self-talk on a day-to-day basis. That's going to come up, right? And the way that you talk and communicate with others on a day-to-day basis. So maybe making sure that you speak in a way that's a little bit more authentic, or maybe you're going to be missing a lot of the details with Mercury retrograding back into Sagittarius, and you realize that you need to be a little bit more focused and a little bit more detail-oriented moving forward. You're going to be sort of reevaluating the language that you use and how you use it. And this could, like I said, for Virgos, this is like the retrogradiest sort of retrograde energy because it's retrograding through your third house, which is the Mercury house, right? It's the house of communication. And so you might have some extra miscommunications. You might have some extra delays when it comes to your daily commute or your travel plans. And so just, you know, breathe. Take extra time to get where you need to go. Take extra time to submit your work, to send those emails, whatever it is that you need to do, because it's going to be important, right? Because this is where a lot of mistakes can happen and a lot of frustrations can build up and pile up and turn into some sort of bigger frustration, because it'll turn into like a big snowball. And then you have Mercury retrograding back into your second house in Scorpio. And so this could be you having to sort of rethink things when it comes to your finances, your budget, the way that you utilize your resources. And so, you know, rebudgeting, taking a look at your finances. There could be some sort of unexpected communication that comes in that causes you to have to sort of rebalance your budget, like a bill that you didn't remember or know about, especially in the sign of Scorpio. And so, you know, just be very careful with spending your money, especially at the start of December, because you might not be able to see things quite so clearly and you might make some mistakes. That's also not a good time to make purchases in general when Mercury is retrograding through your second house, especially major purchases, because it's not going to turn out the way that you think it will. All right, and so Venus stationed to go retrograde for Scorpio and Scorpio rising. Venus will station to go retrograde in your 12th house, and so this is a time when you can be getting a lot of really sort of subconscious and subliminal messages coming through sort of your dreams, meditation, through like downloads, visions, impressions, that type of thing, involving your relationships, right? That's Venus. And also a lot of energy around your self-worth, your self-image, that type of thing too, because Venus has been retrograding through your sign as well. So this is going to be sort of a snapshot of, you might be getting some sort of powerful message about your finances or about your relationships. That could come through like dreams, very literally. So, I mean, people sometimes make fun of me when I talk about dream journals and stuff like that. But I'm a big advocate of writing down your dreams and, you know, journaling and that type of thing, because you start to see these connections, these patterns, these synchronicities. And this week in particular is going to be, you could get some really potent imagery that comes to you. And so just make sure that you're logging it and writing it down, because it might not make sense at first, because this is some subconscious stuff that's bubbling up to the surface. And it might guide you in the right direction when it comes to some sort of financial situation that you've been hung up about, or an old past relationship that maybe you need to work through and move out of and let go of. And so it's going to be important. With Mercury retrograding through your second house, this is going to be a time for you to sort of rethink your finances. You might find yourself having to return items that you purchased in the past, having to repurchase something because it broke, right? Having to rebalance your budget and renegotiate different contracts and agreements involving finances. And so, you know, that's going to be a time when you're going to have to start thinking about these types of things. Mercury is going to be retrograding backward into your sign, and so the miscommunications, mishaps, all of that are going to affect you a little bit more personally at the start of December. And so, you know, just take extra time. And also, as I mentioned with Libra, for Scorpio rising, especially during that first part of the Mercury retrograde, don't buy things you don't need, right? You might find yourself having to return things, and you might find yourself, you know, out of money or something because you spent some money that you thought that you had and maybe you didn't have. So hold on to it. Don't do your Christmas shopping just yet. You still will have plenty of time, because Mercury goes direct on December 7th or December 6th. So you could do the sort of last minute, it's not even last minute then, Christmas shopping and all of that, because you want to make sure that you know what you have and that you understand your finances and what your resources are that are available, because there could be something unexpected that comes up, like an unexpected bill. And then Mercury retrogrades back into the first house. A lot of sort of rethinking the way that you show up in the world, your identity, your persona, your personality, the way that you communicate and interrelate with people, your self-image, all of that type of stuff could be coming up for review. For Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising, so for you, Venus is going to be stationing to go direct in your 11th house, which is the house of friends, social networks. Whatever's going on for you on that day as it relates to your networks, right? Your friends, the people that you surround yourself by choice, groups of people, organizations, clubs, humanitarian types of organizations, charity organizations, all of those types of energies, whatever is going on for you in terms of your relationships with these groups of people on this day, pay a very close attention, because it's going to be showing you maybe where you've fallen out of balance and you need to sort of revisit something, or you need to do something a little bit differently as Venus moves forward. For Mercury is going to be retrograding from Sagittarius, which is your sign, backward into Scorpio. And so Mercury retrograding in Sagittarius is you rethinking the way that you show up in the world. This is going to be affecting you very personally in terms of you really honing in on what you want, in terms of acting on your own self-interest, how you want to show up in the world, how you want other people to see you, that type of thing. You might want to sort of get a makeover or something like that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it with Mercury going retrograde, but you can start thinking about it, right? I'm going to get that haircut when Mercury goes direct, that type of thing. And then Mercury is going to retrograde back into your 12th house, where you're going to be, that's going to be a very internalized Mercury, where you're going to be spending probably the first week of December either in solitude or reflection, or just spending more time sort of doing that deep introspective work, doing that spiritual work, going inward, right? And figuring out what you truly want, need, and desire for when Mercury goes forward and moves direct when it goes back into your sign of Sagittarius later on in December. But yeah, I feel like Sag rising people, especially, well, in general, Sag rising people, with Mercury going backward into Scorpio into your 12th house, that's going to be a major time of introspection and reflection, where you're going to kind of pull away from the world because you need that rest. You need that period of really sorting things out from a deeper place before you move forward. My cat's still on the roof. I just let all my pets out. And now they're all just doing whatever they want. All right, so Capricorn and Capricorn rising. Venus is going to be stationing to go direct in your 10th house of career and public reputation. And so Venus stationing in your 10th house is an indicator that there's going to be some sort of importance on Friday placed on your work and your work relationships, especially your career, your relationships with people in positions of authority in your workplace. Or if you are somebody who's in a position of authority, it's looking back and reflecting on your relationship with, you know, your subordinates or something like that. That could be part of it as well. This could be a snapshot where you have to take a really good hard look at like completing a really important project or something along those lines. Maybe you thought that you had it all together, but you realize that it doesn't look good, or it's not balanced, or there's something that you need to adjust. When you see the big picture and you see that sort of snapshot, it's like, maybe this is not quite right. This is imbalanced in some sort of way. And this could bring up, you know, past relationships with coworkers, past relationships that are work related to the forefront of your consciousness, so that way you can sort of work with that energy and work through that energy. So moving forward, you don't have to deal with it anymore. With Venus going retrograde, it's going to be in your 12th house. So the first couple of weeks of Mercury retrograde are going to be in your 12th house. And so Mercury retrograding in your 12th house is a good time for deep introspection, for deep spiritual work, especially deep introspection as it relates to your values, your moral values, your ethical values, your philosophical beliefs, your religious beliefs. And so spending time in contemplation, spending time in deep creativity, journaling, again, paying attention to your dreams, logging your dreams, because you could get a lot of really important messages about changes that you need to make after Mercury goes forward. And then Mercury is going to retrograde back into your 11th house. And so when Mercury retrogrades in your 11th house, you can have communications coming up from people from your past, especially like groups of friends, your social networks, you know, organizations, clubs, that type of thing. So you can have these past communications, or these communications from people from your past sort of popping up. There can be a lot of miscommunication and confusion as it relates to connecting with your friends and the people that you surround yourself with by choice. And so, you know, just double and triple check those text messages. Make sure you don't send something offensive to the wrong person or whatever it is, because that could come up for you as well. Okay, and so for Aquarius and Aquarius rising, Venus is stationing to go direct in your 9th house. And the 9th house is the house of foreign travel, your beliefs, especially sort of the bigger picture and broader perspective beliefs, your philosophical beliefs about God, the universe, the world around you, the way that you frame your reality. And so you're going to be having this sort of snapshot where you have to take a good hard look at your relationships, or your maybe your balance in this area, or maybe an old relationship comes back around and causes you to rethink your beliefs on a grander scale. And so, you know, that's Venus stationing to go direct. Pay attention to what's going on in those areas of life. Or maybe it's somebody from a foreign country that you know from your past that, you know, comes back into your mind, or that communicates with you on that day, or a teacher. That could be another thing as well. Mercury retrograding from your 11th house back into your 10th. So Mercury is going to be stationing to go retrograde in your 11th house, which is the house of friends, social networks, clubs, organizations, groups of people that you choose to surround yourself with, right? You're surrounding yourself with these people by choice because you like to be around them. With Mercury in retrograde, you might be rethinking some of those choices. You might think that you might have to rethink your role in a certain organization or club or sort of charity event. You might have to rethink your role and the dynamic in your friendships and in those types of relationships. You know, you might have a lot of communication coming in from your friends and people from the past, like past friendships coming back around, and people that you haven't heard from for a very long time, texting you, calling you, sending you a message on Facebook or Instagram. And, you know, when Mercury goes backward into your 10th house, that's going to be you having to rethink some sort of project or some sort of career goal or plan, or maybe there's going to be potentially some sort of miscommunication, or a need to rethink things when it comes to your relationship with your boss, or you know, the people in positions of power and authority over you. And so that's going to be a busy time, I would say. It's going to be the first week of December for Aquarius and Aquarius rising when it comes to your work. And just make sure that you're double, triple, and quadruple checking every work-related anything during that time. All right, and for Pisces rising, Venus is stationing to go direct in your 8th house, which is the house of joint finances, right? And Venus has an association with finances. And so this could be you kind of getting a snapshot or some sort of important information about your need to come back into balance when it comes to power and control issues, when it comes to issues involving joint finances, debt, taxes, other people's money. You could have some sort of letter come in the mail or something, or some sort of communication come in involving money, debt, taxes, other people's money, that type of thing, where you need to sort of look at what you value in these areas. This could also just this could cause you to reflect a little bit more on intimacy in your relationships. Maybe your relationships haven't had the intimacy that you're craving and that you're longing for. And, Venus stationing to go direct in your 8th house is really going to highlight that. And so, whatever it is that comes up for you, pay close attention to that, because it's showing you what you really need to look at and potentially change and do differently when Venus moves forward. And Mercury is going to be retrograding in your 10th house of career and public reputation, and it's going to go back into your 9th. And so for the first couple of weeks, Mercury will be retrograding through your 10th house of career. And so that's going to be an important time for sort of revisiting, restructuring things, reorganizing things when it comes to your career goals and plans, the bigger picture, the bigger projects, your relationship with people in positions of authority. Again, for Pisces in particular, this is going to be a time when you might be extra busy with your work. And part of the reason you might be extra busy is because you might be making some mistakes. So make sure that you're double, triple, quadruple checking everything that you do when it relates to your work. Give yourself extra time for those big projects and for those important meetings, and just make sure that you're being heard and seen correctly and that you're not saying things that you don't mean, or that you're coming across in the way that you want to. So spend some extra time thinking about what you're going to say in that presentation, right? That type of thing. With Mercury retrograding into your 9th house, the first week of December is going to be a time of a little bit of introspection, I would say, where you're going to be looking at your philosophical core beliefs about God, the universe, the world around you, the way that you frame reality through your ethical and moral values and codes. This could also be you revisiting something involving education, or something that you learned in the past that comes back around and you need to reintegrate. Or this could be you thinking about maybe even something like going back to school, right? And so it's not a time to do it, but it's a time to think about it. This could be communication coming in from foreign countries, people from the past that that live at a distance. Could be sort of coming back around and sending you a message, on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, out of the blue. And so you're reminded of these people, right? And so maybe you're going to communicate with them or reintegrate them into your life in some sort of way. All right, so that is all 12 signs, you guys. Thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you for subscribing to my channel. I just reached 5,000 subscribers, so I'm excited about that. So keep subscribing. And thank you so much. And if you want to book a reading with me, you can absolutely always do so at the link in the description below. I actually did want to mention, I forgot to mention, that if you want to get a transit reading for 2019, make sure that you book it now if you want to get it, in time for January, just because I am booked up all the way through till after the holidays right now. So if you book it now, you'll get your reading at the start of January, and you'll be able to know what's coming up for the year ahead. But I don't want anyone to miss out and to be like, oh, I wanted a transit reading for 2019 and I can't get it to you till February, right? All right, so anyway, so you can book a reading with me. The link is in the description below, and I will see you guys next time. All right, thank you. Bye.